G'day mate, 40 here. So how do you think the QAnon people are doing today, right? They're probably, throwing up, vomiting. Letting go of one's delusions is very hard. I just heard a statement in a 12-step talk that alcoholism or any other addiction is just one particularly intense manifestation of what is a general human tendency to live with the substantial numbers of delusions, right? Like we all tend to live with a lot of delusions, and delusions about ourselves in particular, and delusions about others. And so one particularly intense manifestation of this can be alcoholism or porn addiction or gambling addiction, or any form of addiction is a particularly intense manifestation of this general human tendency to live with delusions. So right now, a lot of people who are believing in trust the plan, a lot of people who are believing in Donald Trump, a lot of people who had delusions about Donald Trump, a lot of people who had delusions about America, a lot of people who had delusions about reality. Today's going to be a very painful day, right? Joe Biden has been sworn in. He is the President of the United States. Kamala Harris is the Vice President of the United States. There is a new administration in power. So for millions of people, today is a tough bit of reality. And perhaps it's a spur to letting go of delusions, right? Letting go of delusions is painful, but often incredibly beneficial, right? So often to enable one thing to live in our life, we have to let something else die. So let's just take your quintessential QAnon supporter, someone who identifies with QAnon. Okay, if they want to use today as an opportunity to become alive and aware of their delusions, this could be the greatest day of their life. This could be like hitting bottom and recognizing that they need to get sober. This could be a time when they finally start to turn things around. Like if you use today as an opportunity to recognize your delusions, to recognize that trusting the plan wasn't really rooted in reality, that Donald Trump was a flawed person, wasn't very good at running things, that he did some good things, did some bad things, and recognizing Donald Trump's humanity and his flaws instead of worshiping the God Emperor. And then what about all the people you may have been following on YouTube and other social media, like a J5 killer, etc., academic agent, essentially telling you to trust the plan, telling you that Donald Trump would be sworn in today for his second term, right? So Scott Adams, a lot of the people who've been feeding you nonsense, who you may have spent dozens or even hundreds of hours watching and listening to, this is marvelous opportunity to let go of people who are assisting you in your delusions, right? So if you're an alcoholic, you've probably had people who were enabling your alcoholism. And if you're a debtor, you probably had people who enabled your debting. And if you're an under-earner, you had people who enabled your under-earning. And if you're a trust the plan, QAnon, conspiracy theorist, right? Yeah, you've had all these people online who are enabling your delusions. And this is a magnificent opportunity to wake up, to make a fresh start, to let go of people who've had a toxic effect on you, and perhaps embrace people who are more rooted in reality, have more access to truth and more willingness to share the truth with you. Right? So the day you give up your delusions, the day you recognize that you've got you've got some problems, very well become like the greatest day of your life. So what's the gift in the situation? What's the opportunity here? Right? New administration. There's a new sheriff in town. There's a new reality, right? How able are you to adjust to the new reality and wake up from, say, delusional ways of thinking that you've had? Right? If you're QAnon, you should recognize that you've been in a delusion, and that you're in a delusion because it elicited pleasurable feelings in you. That's the reason we choose conspiracy theories, ideologies, politics, forms of religion, communities, is because they elicit pleasurable feelings in us. But just because something elicits a pleasurable feeling doesn't mean it's true or that it's good. If something's not true and not good, then you'll experience humiliation through your allegiance to something that's not true and not good. So it's an opportunity to use the humiliation of being wrong about Donald Trump, or the humiliation of being wrong about QAnon, or humiliation of being wrong about Trust the Plan, or humiliation about being a devotee of Scott Adams or academic agent, or all these buffoons who are peddling essentially Trust the Plan. Right? This is an opportunity to grow up. I figure out, why did I get such pleasure from believing things that are so stupid? And recognizing that it's not a good idea necessarily to trust yourself in certain areas. Right? It's an opportunity to recognize that perhaps there are areas of your life where you don't want to trust yourself. And then there are areas of your life where you do want to trust yourself. So I remember in 8th grade, I had a very painful experience. I'd been a marathon runner, and then I could no longer run marathons because I was developing knee problems. So I had Osgood-Schlatters disease in my knees, and they were swelling up whenever I would run. And so I had to quit my favorite hobby and had to essentially abandon that which I was basing my identity around. You know, I had these delusions that I was going to be a great runner one day. Well, with time, I realized that due to the shape of my feet, I was never going to be a great runner. I was never going to be particularly fast. I was never going to achieve athletic distinction. So when one dream died, I sought out my new identity. And so I read an introductory textbook on journalism in 8th grade, and I said, this is going to be my new identity. I'm going to become a journalist when I grow up. And so much of my life revolved around journalism. Eventually I got a job working in the news department at K-High Cahill Radio. I interned for 2 years in high school, then worked at the radio station for a couple of years after high school. Then I realized, this is too shallow. I don't like doing these 60-second stories. I want to go deeper. So I decided I'm going to become an academic. I want to become an economist. And so for the first time in my life, I realized I need to get serious with my education. So I studied hard and got an A in trigonometry. Studied hard, got into calculus. I was doing well in calculus. I got accepted into UCLA to study economics. So I had a vision for myself. My new identity was that I was going to become an academic. And then illness came along and destroyed that dream. And I tossed and turned in bed for a few years. And when I made a partial recovery, I realized I did not have the strength to power through to an academic career. So I had to try something else. So I tried the acting scene. I moved to Los Angeles, had a little bit of success getting auditions, getting an agent, meeting people, connecting with people, and remember some people I met thought that because I was so focused and dedicated to my craft of acting, they predicted great success for me. But eventually I took the advice of one guy who owned a theater, and I was on his improv team, and he let me go, and he says, you're more suited for solitary endeavors rather than working with groups of people. So finally, in the summer of 1995, I decided that it's time to write a book. I'm a writer. And I remember a story, I think Andrei Codrescu, the poet, told on NPR. I think I heard this circa 1986, that when he was a young man, he thought he'd be a sculptor when he grew up. So he apprenticed himself to this great sculptor. It was very hard, very rigorous work. And after the, 3-month apprenticeship was up, 6-month apprenticeship was up, the sculptor told him, you're never going to be a sculptor, you're going to be a writer. And Andrei said, well, why did I waste all this time being apprenticed to you for the past few months if you knew this? And he said, this is a building block for your career. You needed to go through this. It's like the Karate Kid. The Karate Kid wants to learn karate. And so he goes to the karate master, and all the karate master has him do is wax on, wax off, just wax his cars. And the kid's getting annoyed. It's like, I didn't sign up for this, I want to learn karate. But what's really going on is that the kid, in waxing the cars, he's learning the moves that he needs to make to become a karate master. So all those acting classes I took, now I get to use them to my benefit for my live streams. But I started writing a book, and then along the way to writing the book, someone told me, oh, you should build a website. You'll make far more money from building a website than from writing the book. And they were absolutely right. So I took that suggestion, built a website, and within a month or two I made more money from the website than I ever did from publishing the book. So started daily blogging, regular blogging, July 3rd, 1997. And then blogging died. Eventually, it no longer was financially sustainable by about 2007. So it was time to let one dream die so that new dreams could be born. So I thought, my new dream will be teaching the Alexander Technique. So I go back to school, I get into debt. I'm going to become an Alexander Technique teacher. And then YouTube comes along, right? So one dream dies, so another dream can be born. So you let one thing go so that you can embark on something else. So the Trump dream is dead. Now we have an entirely new America. And all these transitions, it's an opportunity to notice where we've been delusional, where we've been out of touch with reality. I was never going to become a great runner. I was never going to become a great actor. But I can use my time in those endeavors, learn something, and when we drop our delusions, we just become much more effective at life. So this abrupt transition to the Biden administration, it's an opportunity to reassess about how we've been wrong about so much of reality. And we can reassess the people that we listen to. There are a lot of people on Twitter that I stopped following. A lot of people on YouTube I stopped following with their delusional political commentary. So people who are buying into ridiculous conspiracy theories, this is when This is the time for a change, right? This is the time to wake up and realize, hey, I've been believing in lies because for whatever reason, lies gave me pleasure. Certain lies, they told me what I wanted to believe. It made me feel like I was part of this secret group who truly understood the way the world worked, that I now had a magic key to how the world worked. And turned out I was wrong. So we can reassess, like, what is it about certain lies, certain theories that give me so much pleasure, even though they're completely out of touch with reality? Like, what's the gift in the Biden administration? For many people, simply might mean that they spend less time thinking about politics. It might mean they have better taste in the commentators that they follow and the books that they read. And letting go of the amount of energy that someone may have invested in Donald Trump, and it frees up energy for other endeavors, right? For a new dream to be born, for a new life to be born, you have to let other things die. So who knows what we'll achieve without spending so much time talking about Donald Trump's tweets. Maybe there's going to be a big purge on social media so that accounts feeding misinformation, delusions, baseless hatred, conspiracy theories will steadily get purged. Maybe if we're ever going to have an alternative social media, it will arise out of this time of mass bannings, right? So if we're ever going to do anything about big tech censorship and building up of alternative platforms, hey Judas, I see you, my friend. This is the time, right? A lot of people are working on it. We could be part of something new, something important, the building up of alternative platforms, building up of an alternative tech. As our dream to be a renewed Republican commitment to free markets and open borders. No, that's a loser. Trumpism is the only way forward for the Republican Party. The Republican Party is not going to split, not going to break off into a third party. Trade restriction, trade protection, and immigration restriction are the only ways forward. Okay, so when you feel sad and when you feel lonely, this can serve as a spur to do the deep work that you need to do to get back in touch with reality and with your best self, right? So instead of living in a prison of your own design and just sending out desperate help signals, you can think about times that people have helped you, what you can learn from that, and how you can help yourself. If you want understanding and attention, you can learn to give understanding and attention to yourself. If you want compassion from other people, learn to give that to yourself. Yeah, the Soviet Union would never have come into existence but for World War I. So we're stepping into a new world, and after we've shed tears for the passing of the old, we can cleanse ourselves, get ready for the new opportunities that present themselves to us, and have a cleansing of our own delusions. Like, did we expect too much from Trump? Were we deluded about Trump and Trumpism? Did we misread the American public? People are going to start missing Trump the moment that Iran attacks. Well, if Iran attacks, will it be retaliation for when Trump took out Soleimani, that key general? Social chaos may make people miss Trump, yeah, but maybe we'll have a reduction in social chaos without Trump. Maybe Trump played a role in the social chaos, and how effective was Trump in minimizing or protecting us from the social chaos? Trump would have won re-election but for COVID-19. Maybe not. I'm not sure. I think Joe Biden was always going to be about 2 percentage points more popular with the American public, particularly in swing states, than Hillary Clinton. So if Biden had run against Trump 2016, I think the odds are 90% that Biden would have won. Yeah, the economy was going like gangbusters. So times change, and there's a lot of news media coverage right now about how well China's doing, that their economy is going to grow 2.4% GDP right now. But it's not really a significant figure. Like, China's debt problem's far more massive than America's. GDP is not a particularly good measure of a country's economic strength. So there's all this media coverage about, how China's coming out of the COVID recession much stronger than its competitors. Is delusional. As each year goes by, the gap between America's performance and the performance of its closest competitors is going to steadily widen. So I don't expect the Biden administration is going to be able to do too many radical things. They'll only be able to do them through executive orders. The Republicans have 50 seats in the Senate. They have 48.5% of the seats in the House of Representatives. So the odds of the Biden administration being able to pass significant legislation are quite small. Human resource departments will be emboldened to hunt down enemies. Yeah, so you notice that the big crackdowns, like banning Trump from media, they happened after the Democrats won both seats in Georgia. So Democrats have been calling for social media crackdowns on dissidents for years. Democrats have paved the way for these crackdowns, and once Democrats took those 2 Senate seats from Georgia and appear to have control of the United States Senate, it was then that big tech acted in a massive way. So big tech has become steadily more censorious during the Trump administration, but Trump administration may well have been holding back the tide to some degree. So there's not much you can do about a tide, but certainly appears that big tech is becoming more censorious since the Democrats appear poised to control all three branches of government: the House of Representatives, United States Senate, and the presidency. So Trump did not serve America well, or the Republican Party well, by his lack of attention to the Georgia Senate race and by putting out the message that the election is rigged. Right? A message that the election is rigged is not a good way to galvanize your supporters to go out and vote. So there are some positive things to learn from Trump's term, namely immigration restriction and trade protection. But he was never very good at running things. Many more Republicans than Dems are up for re-election in 2024. Yeah, but there's still a very good chance that Republicans will win one or both chambers in 2022. So the game is not up. Life is not over, because we have the Biden-Harris administration. What typically happens when one party takes control is that they overreach and create a backlash. So 2010, there was a massive backlash against the Democrats. And in 2006, there was a massive backlash against the Republicans. So after 2 years of the Democrats in control, very likely have some kind of Republican backlash in 2022. But a great time to reassess. Where have we been delusional? Where have we been out of touch with reality? And I find we're better served by Dems can control backlash with their control over corporations' media. No, that's where I disagree. People are not evolved to be gullible. So Democrats dominate the media, and yet the country still votes about half for Republicans. So the media and big tech dominance is not going to turn a substantial portion of voters into voting Democratic. Robert says, I've not been delusional on any point. I can't contest that. I can't think of any examples where you have been delusional. But how can one tell when one has been delusional? When one gets humiliated and when one's life becomes unmanageable. So how does one know if one has a drinking problem, if it leads to unmanageability, if you get arrested for drunk driving, if you get fired? Right. How does one know if one has a relationship problem? Yeah, if you keep getting divorced, you can't sustain a relationship. And unmanageability is the flashing arrow pointing to where one has delusions, where one is out of touch with reality.